Hey guys, good evening. Um, I thought I was going to get a 30-second intro countdown clock, but it didn't go. So we'll just jump right into it. All right. I want to go up to the beginning here because this is really may not be what he or she intended, but it's the perfect comment to start on here because this was really the theme of this show tonight. and I wanted everybody to see this. So probably JVM took this from the description of what the topic was tonight. But he or she says, how can 12 untrained people who never saw the body unanimously convict someone of a homicide beyond a reasonable doubt when the medical examiners of Massachusetts had lots of doubt? This is the problem. It's how people, and not just people, but many lawyers, including Vinny and other lawyers on TV, how they weigh evidence. It's incorrect. Now, you might say, who are you? Are you a former law enforcement officer? No. Did you did you ever take a criminology course? No, I don't have that expertise. What I'm going to give you is just, sorry, let me find this. These are my opinions, and they're going to have to stand on the face of the arguments that I make, the examples I give you. All right. I'm not standing on credibility. I'm not standing on my resume. I'm standing on these arguments. And that's how I want to develop them. I started developing them a lot in the first book. And I continue to develop them here with your help, trying them out on you guys. And it's important. So let's just start there. Well, let's go. We'll come back to the medical examiner one. Let's say let's use the taillight as an example. And we look at it. The mistake that is made is that people look at an isolated piece of evidence. That's it. And if it doesn't establish that degree of certainty beyond a reasonable doubt, then people confuse that to think, aha, there's reasonable doubt. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. Okay. So, for example, the video at 5:08 when Karen pulls out the ring video, it shows a pretty clear image of the taillight broken and missing pieces. And strangely, without missing a beat, the Karen Reed side, including Nick Rocco, has been saying for over a year that's just cracked. Alan Jackson said it in the closing arguments. Now, without even blinking, they've switched arguments to say, well, it's missing pieces, but it's not, it doesn't look the same as it was in the Sally port. So something else happened to it. Okay, but you're just ignoring the fact that you were insisting that it was clearly cracked for the last year. And you're going to ignore that. But that's a side argument. In any case, let's go to that example. At so at five, we see the piece there that it's missing pieces at 5:08. Now, somebody might say, well, there's a 10% chance well, it looks like it's pretty clearly missing pieces. There's a 10% chance that that's some kind of bad image, or maybe those pieces were pushed in. Now, clearly, no pieces broke off and fell in the snow because that would be visible in the fresh snow below, which is only an inch or two high and very well lit. So you'd be able to see if something had fallen and broken that, even something very small. So, is it possible that the taillight was pushed in and those pieces were not missing? They were still inside the taillight. Well, I don't think there's a 10% chance of that, right? Aha, reasonable doubt. That's 10%. Now I don't know what the number is for reasonable doubt. Is that number 5%? Does 5% equal reasonable doubt? Does 2%? Does 10%? I don't know. But the point is you're looking at that one piece of evidence in isolation, and that's the mistake. So just staying on the taillight. You also have the 822 dash cam video, which clearly shows it missing. You also have the dash cam video from the police cruiser, which shows the Karen's SUV being loaded onto the tow truck, clearly missing a piece. Now, all those pieces, all those images are somewhat distant. So maybe each one of those pieces, maybe each one of those videos in isolation might leave that 10% room for it could be some other explanation, unclear image or whatever. So each one of those could be reasonable doubt. But added all together, they can't be. Could each one of those at 90%, they say like each have 90% probability that shows that it's missing pieces? Are all of them going to be a bad image that shows that same thing? No. In addition, we have Karen describing to Gretchen Voss in an audio that was played in court that she herself showed Ken and Jerry that taillight at about 5:45, and she herself plucked a piece out. That's a huge piece of evidence. Now, all that there means that taillight was missing pieces very similar to what we saw later on the Sally report, and that's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not. You can't just pick on that isolated moment. In addition, we have the timeline. The timeline shows that so Karen's reassembled Lexus taillight piece was presented in court last week. Again, it matches like 98% of what was missing from the Lexus. And those pieces were found at street level, under 3 feet of snow. And there was no time where anybody had access to that vehicle and except at the Sally port. And at the Sally port, it was too late. It was too late by the time it was at the Sally port to get those pieces and move them and bury them 3 feet down in the snow at the crime scene in front of all the CERT team, in front of Lieutenant Tully and other officers that were there. So there is no reasonable doubt when it comes to that taillight piece. And on this goes with this case. Another example is the missing pieces of glass. The pieces of glass that were found, or not glass, but taillight plastic that were found on the bumper. Now, it's pretty clear that those pieces are matched to Karen's Lexus. Is there doubt about that? Yes, there's plenty of doubt about that. There's reasonable doubt as to whether or not those pieces match Karen, that all those pieces belong to the Lexus taillight. There were 5 found on the bumper and I think 9 found on the ground. Do all those pieces match to either the taillight or the cocktail glass? Presumably mostly the cocktail glass. Well, again, if the case against Karen Reed is dependent on matching those pieces of cocktail glass and of taillight pieces, then it doesn't really matter whether there's doubt about whether those match, because there's a whole bunch of other evidence, and that evidence is very, very low on what is necessary to prove that Karen Reed struck John O'Keefe. Sorry about that. So you can't just look at something in isolation, especially these lower level pieces of evidence, and say, aha, and this is what's going on all the time. Peter Elquist on Court TV, Vinny to a degree, they keep looking for this reasonable doubt, and they're trying to latch it onto something that is not reasonable doubt and is not relevant, and it's not a logical, it's an abuse of the logic of reasonable doubt. That's the only other way to describe it. That's why I put it in the title. It's an abuse. It's a misuse, and it comes from fundamentally not understanding how these things work. Now, the example used here, how can 12 untrained people who never saw the body unanimously convict someone of a homicide beyond a reasonable doubt when the medical examiners of Massachusetts had lots of doubt? What doubt did the medical examiners had that was relevant here? The doubt that the medical examiner had was whether or not what was the specific cause of death for John O'Keefe. But how could they know? She only can testify what she knows. She wasn't at the crime scene. She's not a crime scene investigator. She's not an investigator. Okay? She is an expert that looks at the body, and she brings in her pieces of the puzzle. And all she can tell is that John died from some combination of hypothermia and the head wound. That's it. She can tell you a little bit about the head wound, but that becomes a piece that you fit into the overall puzzle. And that's for the investigators and the prosecutors and the accident reconstructionists to do. It's not for her to do. She's giving you her piece, and that's it. So the fact that she doesn't know whether John was run over by a lawnmower or struck by a baseball bat or struck by a vehicle is bloody irrelevant. And I don't understand why people can't see that. And I'm trying to be patient about that. What is the point? What is it you expect? Do you expect her to have that the medical examiner has some kind of psychic training too, that she puts her magic tools in and it brings us back in time and recreates exactly what happens in that moment? No, she is providing, like all the other investigators, pieces of the puzzle. Michael Proctor's job as lead investigator was not to solve the puzzle. His job was to help assemble that, by help direct, bring together all those various components of the investigation, and then people higher up in the prosecution's office put it all together. That's how it works. That's how it should work. That's common sense. What is escaping people that they don't understand this? It drives me crazy. I don't understand how common sense. I don't this stuff. You shouldn't need a criminology course to understand this stuff. You shouldn't need to go to law school. It's common fucking sense. I don't really, sorry to get upset, but I just don't understand it. It's what is the reason for ignoring common sense? I don't get it. Um it drives me crazy. And this is kind of a big thing that I wanted to accomplish in the book, and maybe try to do a little bit in the second book, which I'm doing with Kate Peter. And we want to make it relevant, but this is a big battle for me because this is going on court TV. We have lawyers on every night. I don't get it. I don't mean to be disrespectful like to Peter, but he just wants to run out with reasonable doubt at the first chance. Anything that doesn't have a full, complete explanation. Reasonable doubt. Let her go. That's crazy. We're never going to convict anybody. Cases. This is not CSI. And the reality is, you're putting all these pieces together. There are no witnesses. There is no video of the event. So you're putting together all these pieces. If Joe said that, great. I mean, Joe's been fantastic. And this is the kind of thing that I've been saying for a long time. You have to put together all these pieces. And I don't understand. If you're a lawyer and you don't understand that, you need to go back to you need to be doing something like clerical law, because you can't weigh evidence. I don't really understand what you're doing in the courtroom. It doesn't make sense to me. So, and I apologize for getting upset, but I have to be patient. These lawyers shouldn't need somebody like me to teach that, or you. They need to just learn how to think. And if they aren't up to the job, they need to do something else. All right. Because they're just talking heads on TV if they can't think their way through a simple, logical problem, as it seems they can't. What else do we want to talk about tonight? So, dare I say it, I do want to extend, as it's important to do just for our own health and our own sanity and our own sense of decency. I do think you have to extend all the time an olive branch to Free Care and Read. And people on that side to extend it to us. Not to everybody, but to people that are decent people and that just care about the truth. They feel there's something here, but as long as they're keeping an open mind and they're not participating in these attacks, and they're not engaging in turtle boy behavior, then it's important to extend that, to keep an open door. All we ask is that you keep an open mind, you keep evaluating whether it's fair to be accusing people that are not accused of a crime, people of which there's no evidence, zero evidence of a crime. Keep accusing them of murder, is to keep destroying their lives, to being either within or on the periphery of a crowd that clearly relishes the destruction of those people's lives. What kind of people want to participate in that? The glee. This is the thing that really started turning me on this case, even before I had patched together a lot of the evidence and realized that the conspiracy was impossible. The glee in which that crowd takes at the misery. So it's bullying. It's like 8th grade shit at the bullying of the McCabe's and the Alberts and Katie McLaughlin. I don't understand it. Turtle Boy releases a picture, the defendant, which she got from the defendant, of John's niece. And his audience only gets bigger, and no one has the balls to even to let it. They should, if they cared about justice like they pretend to do when they're out there with their little pink uniforms. If they cared about their justice, if they cared about rightness and justice and decency, they would look at Turtle Boy and say, "It's enough. You need to go away. You need to shut up. You need to go home. You're not from Canton. Get out of our town. Get out of here. You're a destructive force that is creating great harm." And if they don't have the courage to do that, I don't want to see them out there protesting, and I won't forgive them for it. Because if you can't stand up to the greater evil in your midst, and he is that, then you're the problem, not Turtle Boy. He's just a guy trying to make money off this shit. At least we understand that. But you're not making money. You're latching on to a cause that you say is important and that you believe in. What about the cause of that guy who every day on his who's imagining, dreaming, fantasizing about Trooper Lieutenant Tully and his wife burning up in a flaming crash, who is threatening to bring his mob, and that's you, his mob, FKR, to bring that mob down to the Attorney General's soccer games of her kids. You stand quiet like that? You socialize with him at the scene? David Yeti socialized with him. Sue O'Connell socialized with him still. Obviously, that sycophant Machado. This is about you. This is going to stand with you long after this trial. This is revealing who you are, and you can't escape it. But you can escape it now before it's over, before it's too late. You can start to make amends. You can look in the mirror and realize the evil that you've sided with. Now, but I said the olive branch to the many people within that group that are not evil. They're decent people that just believe something happened here. And maybe this is something, thinking this through and this kind of logic is something they're not used to. They're good at other things in their life. They're not good at this. They've made some mistakes. You know, does anybody remember that show, Solved Mysteries? Right? Remember that great show, Solved Mysteries? No, you don't, because it didn't exist. It's unsolved mysteries. That's what appeals to us. Mysteries, cover-ups, conspiracies. That's what appealed to all of us in this case, because all that seemed potentially there from the beginning. But you have to recognize in yourself that we as human beings are drawn to that. And and ethics and human decency require you to ask yourself, am I vulnerable to am I vulnerable to being duped by a defense team conspiracy theory because I am drawn to those kind of mysteries? Is there something else with this that has a personal resonation with me that makes me unable to see through clear logic? So when this person that said the medical examiner had doubts, well, of course the medical examiner has doubts. Her job, why would she even know what happened? Why would the medical examiner know the vehicle data? Why would she? You tell me that. What was that person's name again? JVM? Let's go back and look again. Uh, JVM. JVM, if you're here, please tell me, why would the medical examiner know about the vehicle data? Why would she know about John's phone data? Why would she know that John's phone left the car, went into the cold just, what is it, 20 seconds before John's phone last moved? Why would the medical examiner know that? If you can't answer that question, you should go back and delete your own comment because it's stupid. It was helpful to us, but it's stupid. I'm sorry. I can do the olive branch on one hand, at the same time, be honest that it's stupid because you can't, it's not logical. You're looking for a reason. You're looking for reasons for reasonable doubt. Meanwhile, probably you and certainly many people you support have been beyond just looking for reasonable doubt. They've been looking to tag innocent people with murder theory, with accusations of murder, looking to destroy their lives, looking to embarrass them socially in any way that they can. Do you see what's going on here? Because if you are a decent person, there's going to be a point a year or two from now, maybe a month or two from now, where you're going to wake up and you're going to face a choice. And your brain will handle a lot of this internally without you even being aware of it. The choice is either to admit that you participated in something horrific, something wrong, or you'll somehow, your brain will revert this to make you convince yourself further and that there is a cover up here, and you'll start to go deeper and deeper off the edge, as we're already seeing with the free Karen Reed, as people like many of us predicted well over a year ago. They're going to, in order to continue to buy into this impossible theory, they're going to be thinking stranger and stranger things and buying into them. So this is important stuff here. And I got to put on the fan. Ah, hold on one second. Okay. I don't. There is no reasonable doubt in the case. But you tell me where you say it, KC. You say, how can you not see reasonable doubt in the case? You tell me. You tell me one thing that leads to reasonable doubt to you. Now, the case is not over yet, so I will say that. Now we already had a first trial, but there may be, for instance, if the state does not have a convincing explanation for the wounds, maybe that could be reasonable doubt. But we haven't heard that explanation yet. We haven't got to that yet. So you tell me, Casey, I'll watch. You say, how can you not receive reasonable doubt? I just explained to you. I guarantee all the things that you think are reasonable doubt, none of them are. I guarantee it. I bet a leg on it. I bet an arm and a leg. Okay, but you tell me. I'm a reasonable person. You tell me what's reasonable doubt. I've just given you examples of things that your side you seize on everything and you call it reasonable doubt, and it's ridiculous. It's immature, to tell you the truth. It's unbecoming of adult human behavior. It doesn't. There are reasonable doubt in plenty of cases. It doesn't exist in this case. It just doesn't exist. I'm looking to see what you got, KC. Give me one. Give me one. Come on, buddy. Spot's on. You made the accusation. Put it up there. What is the reasonable doubt that you see? Free Karen Reed Nation. Lonely eyes turn to you. You're on the spot. You said there's reasonable doubt everywhere. Give me one spot. Point your finger at one spot that there is actually reasonable doubt. We're all waiting for you. Come on, man. Don't be shy. We can't see. See, I'm up. My face is out here. They can attack me. They can make shit up about me. We don't know your face. You're anonymous. We don't know who Casey is. You got nothing to be afraid of here. Tell us what you mean. What is the reasonable doubt? Are you on the phone with Turtle now, trying to figure out what the reasonable doubt could be? I guess we got nothing. Somebody said something. Even our side is trying to help him now. So they're saying, "What about Proctor?" Okay, since you can't think of anything, see Buchman's testimony. That doesn't. I don't know what you mean by that. That doesn't. You know what? You have to tell me what in that testimony makes you doubt. All right, you can do that in a sentence, right? Tell me one thing that's in there. So, and while we wait, we'll go to Proctor since somebody mentioned that trying to help Casey out from our side. This is why Proctor does not add up to reasonable doubt. There's no doubt that Michael Proctor, what he demonstrated was potential bias against Karen Reed. And that bias could have impacted his judgment. However, you cannot get around the simple fact that even if in some bizarre world, Michael Proctor was willing to plant evidence, he did not have time to. He did not have access to the vehicle. He did not act like someone who was trying to get to the vehicle. All right. So when he left the McCabe's house around noon to go to the hospital, if it was any time that he was tasked with planting evidence, that would have been it, because that's when he was at the house with the arch villain Jen McCabe and her husband Matt and Brian Albert. If there was ever a time where they were going to say you need to plant this evidence, that was it. And so when they left there, Karen's Lexus was sitting a mile away in John's driveway, a mile away. All they got to do over there is go over there and get them some taillight piece, and then go over to the crime scene where it was unattended at the time. Bury it down. Did they do that? No. They went to the hospital. So they weren't acting like people that had any kind of mission to do that. But whatever, regardless of the case, that Lexus all day was either under video surveillance in the driveway, first in John's driveway, first in John's garage, then in John's driveway, then later at Karen's house at Dighton, or Karen was in the Lexus all day until it got to the Sally Port. Say it in a deeper voice. My voice is a little off, and I hope it someday comes back. It's related to various treatments and stuff. But my voice is weaker. It is what it is. So I can probably get some kind of synthesizer to enhance the audio. But And anyways, so all day that Lexus is accounted for. The only time it could have been tampered with was at the Sally Port, which is a really weird theory considering there are cameras in there and there are numerous cops in there, or at least 5. But it doesn't matter because we know what time it arrived at the Sally Port. We know what time the CERT team was digging, and they had already started digging when it arrived at the Sally Port. And those pieces were found 3 feet down in the snow. There was no way the earliest Michael Proctor could have left the Sally Port would have been what, 5:41? The main piece was found 3 feet down at 5:45, and they'd been digging for since before 5:30. So there was no time. So I don't care if somebody gave Michael Proctor $1 million to help frame Karen Reed. He could not have done it. So no matter how much bias he supposedly demonstrated towards Karen, he does not add up to 1 ounce, 1 penny of reasonable doubt. Not 1 penny. This is thinking. This is what you need to learn how to do. All right. I didn't see. I'm going to go back and look. If you don't answer, I can't just sit there and study chat. So after I asked you, I watched it for like 5 minutes. Then I have to look at the camera. So I didn't see it. If somebody else has seen it, try to highlight it for me. Joe, if you can highlight what the answer is. I'm scrolling back now, but it's hard. All right. Let me know if anybody find. I'm gonna stay. I'll do it this way. I'll stay watching the chat live for a few minutes. If anybody can tell me what Casey said specifically, I don't want to hear this Buchanan's testimony. That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, you have to realize, I'm not sure you understand how defense lawyers work. You should at least understanding it from seeing my cousin Vinny or something. You have, no matter how good the witness is, Buchanan was a good witness. Kerry Roberts was a good witness. But if you have a good defense lawyer that's up there manipulating them and trying to put words in their mouth or get him to trip up and say something, eventually they will. Now you guys go running around screaming, reasonable doubt. Aha. That's not rational. That's not rational. So, for instance, Kerry Roberts said, well, I lied, but I didn't intend to. Her testimony was flawless, but they got that one clip there, right? But it was just an imperfect choice of words because they were trying to get her to say she lied and she knew that. But she followed it by saying, I didn't intend to. So basically what she said was, I did not lie. But in the quote, it's I lied. And for you people, you jump on that and call that reasonable doubt. It's not. Her testimony was completely truthful and it's backed up by other aspects of it. So, I mean, if you can't bring an argument to the stage, get off the stage. You're not adding anything to the discussion. I welcome people from the other side, but they have to bring in intelligence. They can't just come out there shouting nonsense and drooling at the mouth. It's stupid. You have to tell me what it is that you think created reasonable doubt in Buchanan's testimony. And we have to understand, I don't know what Vinny really believes on this stuff, but I know he knows he's a professional host and he's trying to build an audience, and he knows the more he can harp on reasonable doubt, the more it appeals to a large segment of the population. And you have to keep that in mind. And I do keep it in mind. But there is no reasonable doubt here. Nothing that's been established yet. There's nothing. There's nothing. This is the witnesses have been good, and this has all been methodically. So, for instance, another one would be they managed to get Ian Whiffen, who also was an excellent witness, but this was a moment that I wish he did better. They got him to say the phone could have been in the house. Did that mean he changed his testimony? Because his conclusions were that the phone never left the area of the flagpole. All right, that's his conclusion. Did he change that conclusion? Was that cross-examination so brilliant that it actually got Ian Whiffen to say, wow, no. What it was he was looking at one isolated piece of data and saying, could that isolated piece of data have shown, could part of the explanation have been that the phone could have been in the house? And the honest answer, which Ian Whiffen gave, was yes. if you look at it in isolation. And that's the microcosm of the problem here with free care and read people and how they're analyzing reasonable doubt. Ian Witness should have spoke up. I think he felt he wasn't allowed to, that he's only allowed to answer the question yes or no. But he should have said, well, yes, but not if you look at the totality of the evidence, because that's his actual answer. Ian Whiffen's actual answer is if you look at the totality of the evidence, no, the phone could not have gone in the house. And that's what all the data leads. And he didn't clean it up right afterwards. And it was not a strong moment for Hank. I don't think, if I remember right, Hank cleaned it up as strongly as I thought was needed to. But okay, I'll take that on, and that's because it's just this is the oldest and easiest thing to debunk. KC said that Canton police did not find the taillight. Dude, you're on the wrong place, man. I'm gonna wipe the ass. I'm gonna wipe the floor with you. You have no fucking idea. I've dealt with all these arguments for a year and a half, 2 years. They go back to the beginnings of it. You are not ready to take me on in an argument. If you come at it with an open mind, okay, because I'll convince you. The Canton police never took a shovel to the crime scene. Never were going to take a shovel to the crime scene. Why? Because they knew it was automatically going to be a state police crime scene. The state police in every city in every town or jurisdiction in Massachusetts outside of the three big cities of Worcester, Boston, and Springfield, which have their own homicide departments, all of those, unattended death investigations automatically go to the state police, automatically. And the Canton police knew that. They weren't equipped. They weren't trained. They didn't have a homicide department. They didn't have an unattended death department. They were never going to investigate that. However, the situation was unique, somewhat unique, because of the weather. The snow was coming down hard. The state police informed them that it was going to be a long time before they got there. So the evidence that was there, if it was biological, was perishable, and all of it was subject to being somewhat to being possibly harder to find later when it gets buried in snow. So all they did was search in the immediate vicinity of where John's was found. That's it. They took out the leaf blower, which I thought was brilliant when combined with the filming, and filmed them gently melting the snow only in that area. There were no taillight pieces on the lawn up there in that area. Okay? The taillight pieces, the majority of them, were in the gutter, as normal people would expect. The collision was not on the lawn. The collision was on the street. That's where the taillight pieces went. Okay? So there was never a chance that those Canton police were going to find those taillight pieces. Never. Simple logic, simple understanding, taking the time to figure out what was going on in the last time I talked to Turtle Boy on the phone over a year and a half ago. I had the so-called meltdown episode when I accused him of speaking directly to Karen and speaking directly to her lawyers. He insisted I was lying. I lost 40% of my audience and really more like 95% of the active audience. I lost 40% of my subscribers in a matter of like a couple hours. People created a picture of a yellow cottage in flames. It was just great glee. They hated me. Why? Because I was on the fence asking questions. I wasn't even really on the other side at this point. I was trying to maintain a position on the fence. They don't like questions. Anybody asking questions, and I was the only one really asking them then, was a danger to them. Now, there were couple others. Jen Coffin Daffer obviously was prominent on Court TV, but she wasn't prominent on Twitter or on YouTube at the time. Kate was obviously on that side, but she was only doing a couple of shows that summer, and they weren't even on Karen Reed. There was maybe an opening 5 minutes on Karen Reed, and it wasn't really looking into the evidence at that point. She was doing it on her own. She was doing brilliant investigating on her own. I had never spoken to her. I never communicated with her in any way until after the meltdown episode. And but it was clear to anybody with common sense. And if you lack common sense, I'm sorry. Maybe there's no way to capture that. Maybe there's no way to just gather. But common sense should have told anybody that this guy was getting all of his information from Canada Defense Team from day one. And if you didn't understand that, well, God help you. The world needs ditch diggers too. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It was obvious. Doesn't mean that she wasn't being framed. It just meant the person who was putting all that information out there was putting it out there in a one-sided way, was not trying to ask whether any of the defense conspiracy theories made sense, was not trying to get any information from the other side. Not even trying. This was someone who clearly had linked his wagon, his whole fortune. He made it clear. This is he wanted to be on 2020 was his dream, he kept saying. And this was his ticket. This case was his ticket to going to the next level. That ticket did not involve trying to seek out information from both sides. That ticket involved playing Karen's theory. And this could be sensed automatically. I knew it since day one, but I knew it for a fact that day because weeks before, about a month before, I think, Turtle Boy had reached out to me to say that Alan Jackson wanted to talk to me. Now, so I knew that he was talking to Alan Jackson. So when I said that on the show, I didn't want to reveal it because I felt like maybe it was confidential. I don't know. I try to go by ethics. But I knew for a fact that he was talking to Alan Jackson because Alan Jackson told him to get in touch with me and say that he wanted to talk to me. Why, I don't know, because my channel was pretty damn small. But they were trying to nip anything, and I was kind of I was the most visible dissent at that time, and they wanted to nip that in the bud. But so their Turtle, knowing that I knew that, still insisted in this chat here, screaming, "He's lying, he's a liar, you're a liar." I also accused Turtle Boy of trying to make money off this. He said, "You're a liar, you're a liar." Just a couple months later, he did an article in whatever magazine where he bragged about making $30,000 a month. And we now know for a fact that he was communicating back that summer multiple times a day with Karen Reed. And in the early weeks when he was first breaking the story, he had over 24 conversations directly with Alan Jackson and David Yannetti. So everything I said was the truth. Everything he said was a lie, and he continued to tell that lie to his audience. But that doesn't bother people like Sue O'Connell or Jess Machado or any of the free Karen Reed people. That kind of stuff doesn't bother them. Nothing bothers them that he does. Nothing. Because they've hitched their wagon to him. They don't want to tell you that, but they have. All right. So, no, Casey, you failed again. So, you're making it. You could at least make them hard. These are easy ones. These are things that I've been debunking for 2 years. You kidding me? It's unbelievable. What do you think this is, like Karen Reed 101? This is graduate level stuff here. This is graduate level coursework. So what else can we talk about? A big thing to talk about is the timeline discrepancy. So what is the state's theory about what time the collision was? Is there more than one time? Is it a work in progress? I don't know. But I'm not worried about it at this point. The people that'll be giving the explanation for the accident reconstruction and putting all this together is a company called Aperture. There's I think 4 people from that, but the main one will be Dr. Welcher. And Dr. Welcher, you're not intelligent, Casey. So it's not an insult. It's a description. So I'm sorry. Facts are facts. We like facts around here. You know, I don't have that much long to live, and I can't waste time with people who don't know what they're talking about. So I'm sorry. Like, obviously I'm not, but so Aperture will be given the accident reconstruction, and they're going to put this all together. And it's a matter of it's not a matter of figuring it out. It's a matter of continuously focusing and refining this to get it down to as close as possible. Because when it comes to technology, it turns out that things aren't so simple. Okay, so it's we've seen that's been one of the great lessons that we've all probably learned from studying this case. is that a timestamp is not necessarily a timestamp. You know, a timestamp, thank you, Jude. A timestamp can be a lot of different things. You have to look at all of the surrounding meaningful, relevant evidence in order to have understanding of it. And this has to be done by experts. And we have to work hard to listen to the most plausible theory. And that's so there are multiple things that we know as far as the timeline. Uh, which one of these things seems to be issues about time clocks? Which one of these issues has a little bit of doubt? So, based on the information that was revealed by Trooper Garino, put together by him in the first trial, based on that, what I was looking at was that data, and I put together a definitive timeline that nails down when the accident occurred, not to the second, but within a few seconds, within say 3, 4, 5 seconds. Of course, that depends on the accuracy of the other data that was given by Trooper Garino. So Karen's coming down with John down Cedar Crest. They're following Waze. Now, Waze is an app that when you turn it on, we learned in this trial, it's you have location data in your phone that is taking information from a variety of sources, most importantly from GPS, but it's also taking it from other things it might have to supplement that. And it's at kind of, unless an app is using it, like Waze or Uber, it's at kind of a low threshold mode. But then once the app is turned on that is accessing that information, it goes to a higher accuracy mode. So when John punched in Waze at that moment, his app is now gathering more accurate GPS data. It's basically taking more snapshots, I think is probably the best way to look at it. And more snapshots in time is going to give you better data. So they're about a mile away when they turn it on, but they've missed the turn onto Cedar Crest. So it takes them up to the next turn, which is, I don't know, Maplecroft or something like that. And they kind of come around a circle, and there's another street that it's on. Name of the street escapes me. It's a few houses or several houses before that house reaches Cedar Crest when Rich Green or the health app picks up the supposed stair climbing. Now they come to the intersection of Cedar Crest. Again, the Waze is running, so it's getting a pretty accurate GPS reading. They go down Cedar Crest. They miss the turn onto Cedar Crest. And we've all done it, right? We don't hear, maybe they're arguing and they don't hear Waze saying turn here or whatever the reason. It's dark. So, but Waze records that time and it's pretty accurate. I believe it was 12:33 and 46 seconds or 48 seconds. I forget. I don't have the chart in front of me, but it's 12:33 and 46. No, I'm sorry. Not when they missed. Yes, when they missed the turn, it's like 12:36, 12:33 and 36 and 46 or 45 seconds or something like that. Actually, let me just pull out the chart. Haven't pulled that out for a while. The old chart that I made that Chick from the Bricks helped me clean up. All right, give me 1 second. All right, so I don't know if you can see this. All right, so at 12:20:08, John enters 34 Fairview into Waze. At 12:23 and 46, all right, so I remembered it pretty accurately. Karen misses the turn from Cedar Crest onto 34 onto Fairview. So then skipping past the next one, we'll come back to it. At 12:24:18 a.m., All right. She finally arrives at the intersection at 12:24, 18 a.m. That's when she, after missing the turn, she's done a three-point turn. She comes back to the intersection, but now facing from the opposite direction. And you remember she's facing Ryan Neagle and Ricky D'Antonio, who's driving the pickup truck coming towards them. Karen has the right of way. So at 12:24 and 18 seconds, that's when she takes the right-hand turn onto Fairview. So somewhere in the middle of 12:23 and 46 seconds and 12:24 and 18 seconds, that's when she does the three-point turn. It's 8 minutes. Now, this is precise. 8 minutes and 4 seconds after that three-point turn is when she puts it in reverse again at high speed, punching it up to 24 miles an hour. That triggers the second event of the data. And it's 4 seconds into that event that's you have the telltale signs of a pedestrian strike. So if you know exact to the second where the three-point turn is, then you know to the second where what time the collision was. Now, in that first trial, we were not told what time that was. I don't think Trooper Garino knew the importance of it because he was never given the vehicle data. So this was the big problem in that last trial. Trooper Garino was never given the vehicle data. Trooper Paul was never given this phone data, and it's the correlation of the two that is so critical here. So what time was that three-point turn? Well, so the first question that would come here is, since we're asking the question, we're questioning the accuracy of clocks. Are these times given by Trooper Garino as when they missed the turn onto Fairview and when they later came back and took it? Are those times accurate, and to what degree? That would be the key question. Now, my guess is they are, and I hope there's an expert that's going to get up there and explain it. But to my knowledge, there's no one on Waze on the list, but Ian Whiffen would probably suffice, but he didn't seem to have been tasked with that. I hope someone did, because this is crucial. It's very important because, excuse me, as we saw with Waze, how the app needs to be accurate. And you see the same thing with your Uber app. These apps need to be accurate in terms of time and location. These same similar apps are developed for like Teslas in order to drive these vehicles. They can't be off. They have to be very accurate. So my guess, and as we see that once you open your Waze app and put in an address, it's suddenly because the location data record that's stored in a directory suddenly becomes much more accurate. My guess is that's also the case with Waze, and it's reaching out to various clocks to synchronize to come up with the most accurate time that it can. So my guess, but it needs to be explained, not by me. I'm just guessing. I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to be appearing in court. It needs to be explained by an expert why this time is accurate. Okay. And the last time we would also at the very end of this. So Karen, we now know, never stopped. After she took that turn, she brought the car straight along past the driveway and stopped around the flagpole. She never stopped. She never let anybody out. When she reached that area of the flagpole was 12:22 and 40 seconds. So it was roughly 12 seconds from when she made the turn to when she made the stop at the flagpole. And that's a distance of, well, I know the distance from the driveway to the edge of the property is 70 feet, I believe. So I don't know the distance from the edge of the street, but there is one house there. So you're going by two properties. So it's probably twice. So it's probably going to be, somebody can measure it if they want to go on to Google, but I'm going to guess that it's probably 150 feet. So she traveled 150 feet in only 12 seconds. So she didn't even really slow down. She just drove to the edge of the property. I mean, she slowed down enough to stop, but she didn't. It's not like she slowed down enough where John could jump out of the car. That didn't happen. It just wasn't. They just drove to the end of the property. I understand that contradicts a little bit the testimony of what Ryan Nagel saw. But Ryan Nagel's a guy going on memory. He's a human being going on memory days later. His memory is going to be foggy. He's been drinking. He's not paying attention really closely to what's going on there. So he's got these vague impressions, and that's it. But it doesn't seem that the data is going to be more accurate than Ryan Nagel's testimony. So what does this mean? There's other data that we can look at too. So we learned there was fascinating stuff about this pocket state and the of the phone and how turning it off and on, you can tell with that. And very interestingly, the battery information. So if I remember right, and I was going through different treatments and stuff, I may have missed some things here, but uh, Ian Whiffen testified that John's phone started cooling as though it had gone outside the door, the car at 12:33:59. Is that accurate, guys? Um, get this out of you. Is that accurate, guys? Was it 12:33:59? Um, I'm just wondering. It's roughly like that. So that, and then I think Hank, or maybe it was 12:53:57, 12:33:57, because Hank said there was 20 seconds between when he got out of the car and when his phone last stopped moving. So were those clocks synchronized? Were those clocks accurate? Because there's the other thing in the report that said that from Aperture that said the collision happened at 12:32:31 and what, 37 seconds or something like that. Well, that's before John got out of the car, according to Ian Whiffen's data. So all this, it has to be brought together in a reasonable way. It does not have to be perfect because the enemy, what is it? What is the expression? The enemy of the good is the perfect. Um, but it has to be convincing. It can't leave room for reasonable doubt. These people like KC, they're going to find reasonable doubt in every twitch of a nose. But to a reasonable person on a jury, it has to be a pretty good explanation. Now, certainly, we also need people to understand that if that data synchronizes in a way that is very powerful but not perfect, it certainly doesn't leave any room for John going in the house. It doesn't leave any time for that. It doesn't leave any time for John. There's no theory that accounts for John's phone last moving at 12:32 and 16 seconds and then being found at the flagpole where Karen says she dropped them off underneath John's body. You cannot come up with an alternative explanation for that. I've tried for 2 years. You cannot. Nobody has. But to those people, it doesn't seem to mean anything to them that they can't come up with an explanation. It's really weird. They've gone on from insisting that there's a cover up here and John was killed inside the house with incredible detail that they come up with. He was lured starting at the waterfall where they were planning this. And Jen McCabe even tried to separate Karen from the pack. And they lured them back, inviting their own daughter to witness the hit inside the house. And they dragged him into the cellar where they had stashed the 17-year-old football player nephew in order to make his bones. And the dog, Chloe, so she could make her bones. I mean, it's so insane that it's amazing that normal human beings that can actually feed themselves believe this stuff. It boggles the mind. It really does. So now they seem to have abandoned any pretense of any of that stuff making any sense, and they just want to go with reasonable doubt. Well, maybe none of that. Maybe John didn't go in the house, and maybe he wasn't attacked, and maybe there's not a cover up, but there's reasonable doubt. That's where they are now? Is that really where you are? You're out there protesting in pink, doing with artists on the street, and some idiot clown dressed up in Judge Cannoni's wig. You're out there with that every day, dedicating your lives to that because there might be some reasonable doubt on some that you think there's some reasonable doubt based on some imperfect piece of data. That's crazy. You're insane. Anybody who's doing that is insane. And I have to press myself hard to respect them, to treat them with respect because they're ruining their community. They're destroying innocent people. And they don't seem to have any concern for that. And that's the lasting impression that I'll take from this case, and many of us will. And I get a lot of messages from people all around the country who are stunned. Some people won't even woman from Minnesota, that mom from Minnesota, she doesn't even want to, she doesn't even trust the people she works for, the school system. Like, you reach the point you don't trust anybody anymore because the people in Canton had no idea that they were surrounded by this many people that worked in their schools, that work in hospitals, they're their neighbors, their friends, people they grew up with, that are secretly this stupid, that are actually this malicious, that don't have any conscience, that take pleasure in this cruelty. And we're surrounded by them. What do we do? What do we do? I don't know. So I'll take a couple of questions and leave it there. And I will say thank you for the people that have been supporting. So, Robert P., thank you as always. Appreciate having you here. Artworks, Artie, my man, thank you. Glad to see you too. Lazy Susan, good to see you. Thank you very much. Oh, they do make me proud. I talked to Kate this morning, and I get all positive feedback about the crew, and I'm very grateful for what they've done. I wanted to keep the channel going just so you guys could watch the trial because people got used to watching it here, and I felt like, yeah, we could just Kate could carry it on her channel, but I think people had gotten used to watching here. I felt like some people would be lost, and she was gracious enough to willing to do it, so I very much appreciate it. Funny Bunny, whatever her doubts, the jurors should know this early in. Kristen is drinking with AJ, setting up ineffective counsel. I don't think she's that devious, but Carrie, good to see you. She's glad to hear my voice. My voice is a little weak. It was fine this morning, and then it got weaker today. So apologize for that. One of my best friends, Dina McKinnon, Pale Yellow. Pale Yellow, who just joined as a member, is where the yellow comes from in this channel. When I set this up, I didn't plan on it being true crime. I didn't really know what to do with it. And just wanted to be kind of a place to tell true or semi-true stories. And she had a film production company called Pale Yellow Productions, and I decided to name it in honor of her, which she didn't want me to do, but I did it anyway. Susan, thank you for the contribution. I'm not competing with Turtle Boy. If I wanted to go down that road, I would have stayed on the conspiracy path. I will always follow the road of truth. That's it. I don't, that's the difference between us, but that's up to him. He can do whatever he wants. I'm going to follow the truth, and I'm going to try to pursue the truth, pursue logically, fairly, fair to everybody, Karen, prosecution, whoever. That's what I'm always going to do. I still, even though I know that Karen did this, I don't know that there was intent. I don't know what she knew when she knew it. And until I have more evidence, I'll always say that. And each individual piece of evidence that comes out in isolation, I will always continue to look at it objectively. I don't want to be one of those people that you get this confirmation bias, excuse me, where every single thing, that proves she's innocent. That proves she's guilty. That proves she's guilty. No, there are some things that don't prove anything one way or the other. So I'm always going to try to be objective. ZigZag. Karen said she did a 3-point turn in front of Fairview after she dropped John off. Did she make a 3-point turn in front of Fairview and leave in the same direction she drove there? And was John's arm swabbed by 2 or just his shirt? So can answer those. We don't know what direction Karen went home because her location data had been turned off some time before that day. So we don't know. Now, my theory has long been, or since the last trial, in the middle of the last trial, that that's what she did. She didn't know how to get home. They had to take Waze to get there. When she pulled away in anger, she realized a couple of seconds into it that she didn't know how to get home. And so she backed up and retraced her steps going down Cedar Crest. That's been my theory. That's the longest route home, but it's the simplest route home with the fewest turns. And we've had people test it out at that time of night. And if you're driving just a little bit fast, like say averaging 35 miles per hour is all you need to do. There's only 2 stop signs on Cedar Crest. There's actually a third one, but it's at the intersection of Cedar Crest and Dedham. So you're just going to stop there to turn right anyways. Then Dedham is a long stretch of road without stop sign. Then you get to Washington Street, which is there downtown, where she has to take a left. I believe those lights are synchronized at that time of night. So if there's no traffic coming in the other direction, it'll be green for her. So she takes the green, or she just got lucky and hit a green. And then you take a quick right, which is a right on red. Now you go up Pleasant Street, which is the longest stretch of road where you can really gun it. Again, no stop signs. And you come to the intersection of Meadows, and if you, as you can see in the dash cam and the ring video, that there's a good chance that her phone automatically connected to John's Wi-Fi from Pleasant Street because it was close enough. But even if it didn't, it's just a quick turn and then into the driveway. And so the key thing that I always said was Trooper Garino last year had said that her phone connected to John's Wi-Fi around 12:36. Well, if around 12:36 meant 12:36 and 5 seconds, that's a stretch to make that timeline fix. But what I said was if that time was around 12 minutes, 12:36 and 40 seconds, that not only allows for it, but it fits it perfectly. It fits perfectly to the way she was driving. And what did we learn this trial? We learned at the exact time was 12:36 and 39 seconds. So if you allow me a moment to pat myself on the back, once again, I was right. So I'm sorry. You want to stack my record up against Turtle Boys? Love it. Love it. Crushing them. But it fits. Now, I think she went home that way, but we don't know. What about the evidence for the 3-point turn? So Karen did say that she did a 3-point turn. Did she? Is she confusing it with the 3-point turn she did on Cedar Crest? No way of knowing. Matt McCabe testified that he saw what he thought looked like someone doing some kind of a turn in the thin layer of snow on the road. But was it that? Was it something else? There's no way of knowing. As far as John's arm being swabbed, John's arm was never going to be swabbed. Why would John's arm be swabbed? The theory that John was attacked by a dog came out a year after John was interred. So there's no way to swab his arm. There was no way to swab. The state had the medical examiner's office, the criminologist. Well, so the criminologist is the one that did the swabbing. She wouldn't have had access to John's body. And she had no reason. She had no reason to think any of that back. She swabbed his shirt, but only a year and a half later, at the behest of the defense team. It was after the defense team put out this theory that they tasked her with swabbing the holes of the shirt. And she did with 2 swabs, and she demonstrated in court. She demonstrated the first time. I'm not sure she did this time. So, no, John's body was not swabbed for anything like that. What we are going to do if Karen Reed is not convicted, well, we have no control over what a jury is going to do. And there is always a chance that one rogue juror, whether it's a Turtle Boy person or someone that thinks like KC, what they're going to do. You can't really, you don't have control over that. So I don't know, Turtle Boy doesn't like to address the fact that at least 8 or 9 of the jurors completely rejected the conspiracy theory that he thinks is so self-obvious that no one else should even talk about anything else. But those people rejected it. And I didn't hear anybody of the jurors that voted to acquit. I don't see any of them coming out and saying that they believe there was a conspiracy theory. Turtle Boy's in touch with several of them. They want to please him. They want to make him happy. They want their day in the sun. They want to please the mob. But are they coming out saying that there was a conspiracy? Not that I've seen. So those jurors, even the ones that they liked, rejected all the things that he says were so true and so certain that anybody else that argues otherwise should be ignored. Come on, Turtle, let's play. You're so easy. You lost, and you know it, and you can't stand it. It is what it is. You'll live longer than me. You got that. You got that going for you. So I guess that's better. But you lost. Kate beat you. I beat you. Most importantly, the evidence beat you. Anybody else have any questions? That was all I had for topics. Let me see if I had listed a couple other things. I wanted to discuss the dynamic between influencer and influenced. So we can look at this in another, I've always been fascinated by this as a creator, as a writer, but the writers that develop, so like a comedian, for instance, develops his material. Yes, a lot of that is practicing that material at home, but then it's going out and testing it and seeing what works, refining it, practicing more with it, adding more to it. Before they develop a new act, it takes months of hard work doing that. And that results in the best types of comedy. Same thing with a rock and roll band or any kind of music band. What works best is those bands that are playing at you know, the the uh, the ground level, playing in small clubs and places where they're able to get feedback from, and they're finding out what's working and what doesn't work, and they develop their songs in that context. And now I know people here got mad when I mentioned the other day that U2 was a great band. In my day, U2 was a great band, and what made them was they right out of high school, and some of them still in high school, were touring Ireland and playing in little places for 5 years and playing to an audience. And Bono, as a lead singer, was very engaged, was very, very engaged with the audience and trying to get them going. And that is all felt in all of their early records. They're playing what works, what fires the energy up the crowd. And I think it's the same thing with here with influencer, which I guess I am now in this case, right? But influenced. Well, really, it's a two-way street. You guys influence me in a lot of ways, not just how to not just how we weigh evidence in these cases and your opinions, but also your what you think is decent or indecent, or when I've crossed a line or I didn't, or when I've gone too far, or when I haven't gone far enough. I really do try to pay attention to that. And in the hands of a more masterful entertainer than I will ever be, that's effective. That's a really good relationship. But you've at least managed to get me to the about as good a place as I can be, and I'll continue to grow with you guys, with your feedback. So I had to. I hadn't been on the Discord since I went in the hospital. I felt bad, so I opened up my Discord today. God, I had to close it. They upgraded it, and they put on this thing. They have this new feature. I got to go back and play around with it, but I don't know why companies do this shit. So even when it's not, I don't have it at all. It's open and it's playing in the background. It's constantly flashing these messages from other groups that I participate or chat. It's constant, it's like a billboard. Flash. If I'm watching a movie, it's flashing there. If I'm writing, it's flashing there. It's like, why would anybody think that I want to see that? And without going into settings, the only thing I could do is turn the whole app down. It's just so, it drives me crazy. These people that develop these apps, they really got to think these things through better. But So I will be back more of a presence, barring some setback on the show during the trial this week. Kate is still graciously offered to run it, and I'm going to let her run it because she does a lot of things better at it than me, and it does allow me to rest. I also have a radio interview Thursday at 8 a.m. Um, I missed all the court TV appearances last night. Last week. It is what it is. Um, but I do have radiation treatments every day this week, but they're in the middle of the day, so I will disappear most days around 1:30. So what I want to do is try to. I don't know who's set to testify, Sparks. What I want to do is try to help them as much as I can in the morning to take the load off. So I was talking to John DePietro on the phone, and he did not think that the defense was going to put Proctor or the two Bryans on the stand. Now, he may have some inside information from being in court. I don't know. I personally would be shocked. I think those are the essence of their defense. So, butt dials is the two Bryans and a couple other related things. And they want to go with Brian Higgins as a third party culprit theory. And they want to show Proctor is biased. And that definitely puts an enormous burden on the prosecution to overcome that. So I would expect they're going to testify for the defense. But there are different rules. I have to, I forgot, I meant to research that. So I'm not a lawyer, as you know. So I want to research what are the rules of questioning those witnesses when you call them? They're hostile witnesses and you call them. It's different than the rules of direct examination are different than the rules of cross examination. So I do want to look that up. Oh, Heather's here, the YCT lawyer. So Heather, tell us what are some of the different rules for cross versus direct examination. So Heather says it's not worthwhile for them to put them on the stand when they're limited to direct exam and Brennan can cross them. So why didn't the prosecution do this in the last trial? So for instance, Heather, um, if they put Proctor on the stand, can they bring up the embarrassing messages? That's what I'd like to know. I will watch for that answer. Maui says, Kevin, do you think of Jackson saying that Karen got out of the car when John died, or when John did? I don't know. People have been asking me about that. And I don't really know exactly when that was said. Because when did Karen say she got out of the car when John did? I have not heard that. So I guess it was. Did Jackson say that in his opening? People were saying. I'll have to go back and watch the opening. I didn't really notice that. It doesn't make sense to me that Karen got out of the car. But are they trying to? I don't know. How can Here's another question for you, Heather. Now the defense, neither side, the defense or the prosecution, in their openings, can say something that has not been established in the evidence, or will not. So what that means is that the the judge knows what's already been in evidence, has an idea. So that's why, for instance, the defense was not allowed to bring up third party culprit in the opening because it wasn't established during the hearings. Now, of course, there was a motion by the prosecution that they wouldn't be allowed to use that. So, but can you just bring something up, anything you want, make it up in the opening that you don't have to later support? Because there'd be no way to support a statement that Karen got out of the car at that time unless Karen was going to testify. So again, so Heather's answer. Thank you. Good answer, Heather. Yes, they can ask him about the embarrassing text, I think she means, but it will be much more limited. They can ask direct questions and not lead them. So if he doesn't answer on direct, they can't lead him. But how does he not answer if the texts are given to him and all he has to do is read them? How does he not read them? Because that'll do the damage just reading those texts. You don't really need to expand on them. Am I right, Heather? Yeah, question from one of our fans. This could be a. Oh, this is Chick. That's a video. So, all right. So this is probably a video of Jackson. So thank you, Chick. Let's pull this up. All right. So she sent me the opening. Thank you very much. And hopefully this won't be the whole opening, but if it is, maybe someone can tell me where we can find that particular.
Ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address.
I can't hear this. Can you guys hear this? This is the lowest volume. Did I go deaf suddenly? I can't hear this.
Karen and John ultimately pulled
All right,
up
that's
to the
good.
house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address.
All right, so I got it. Good. Thank you, Chick, from the bricks. Appreciate it. So good call, guys. Good question, Maui. I don't know. It does sound like deliberate there. It doesn't sound like it was an accidental fly-off statement, misstated in some way. He's reading. See, Hank Brennan did his from memory. Alan Jackson is reading on that very specific point there. Play it one more time.
Karen and
You can see it.
John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were at the right address.
All right, so very good. I don't know. That's interesting. That is very interesting, guys. What do you guys make of that? And thank you, Mark. Thank you for your generosity. And I noted all your generosity during the trial. It's not needed. It's appreciated though. Your friendship is appreciated. So you have a friend of me whenever you need it. So that's the thing is that is interesting. What is the theory that the defense's range of theories here is really narrowed down to nothing, right? So what are they going to attempt here? What information do they have to overcome that puts Karen outside of the car? Do they now have Karen's? See, Hank managed to get forensic data. Well, we don't know. We believe that forensic data from Karen's phone that was not accessible in the first trial for some reason um, wasn't new. It was just the extraction of Karen's phone went to a taint team, which is the Attorney General's office in Boston, and for some reason they only released a report of that extraction to both sides. They didn't release the actual extraction and the data behind it. So is it possible if they have that data that they're able to look at Karen's battery information just like they looked at John's? So did Karen's phone show signs of going outside the vehicle at that time? If that's true, she's going to go for jail for a long time because now second degree is more than on the table. If she got out of that car at that time, I don't know, my God, it's just unbelievable. But I don't know. So I don't really, you know, I don't mind speculating as long as we say that we're speculating, and I don't know exactly. I don't know anything about that situation. I hadn't even caught that comment until you guys from the opening until you guys just pointed it out now. So that's great job on you guys. Thank you very much. It's good to have that community eye out there looking at every little piece. There would never be any witnesses to getting out of the vehicle. Well, that's not true. We don't know. So we don't know exactly what time Ricky D'Antonio left, but I would guess that Ricky D'Antonio left and she was sitting in the car. So they probably got out after Rick and Donnie drove by, a minute or two before. If they got out, I'm not saying she got out. I'm just if that's the case. And if she got out, no, there would be no witnesses. There are no witnesses. Would there be any other evidence from the vehicle data? There's all kinds of there's what is it? About 7 gigabytes of new data. Now maybe it's gibberish and meaningless, but there could be in there things like there are sensors on the seats that show when someone is in the seat and when wasn't in the seat. We learned about things like um, pocket, pocket settings on the phone. Your phone is always awake even when you're not. So if you pick it up, it's moving and it's using everything at its disposal to get information. So what we learned is if the camera is blocked based on that and maybe some other combination of things such as movement, the phone decides it's in your pocket. So it's in pocket mode. Very clever, right? These Apple phones think of everything. They're doing a whole bunch of things that we have no idea what they're doing. And none of them are designed for forensic data use. This is why everything would have to be, you have to take everything carefully with a grain of salt on an isolated piece of data from the phone. You have to look at the total picture. But that's very interesting. But the battery thing was interesting. And so we know what time John got out of the car because of that. Heather says this trial is now going how it's supposed to be going. No disrespect to Larry, but he was playing defense, not offense. Yeah, it was always baffling, but I'm not a trial lawyer. I've never been to a trial. Well, I've been on a couple of juries, but I've never been on a murder trial, and there were a lot of strategic aspects of like, look, these state workers, many of them are overworked. Pause for a second. When I was in the hospital, I went through an endoscopy, and they found that I have severe esophagitis caused by radiation burns. It'll take weeks, if not months, to heal, but it causes this kind of reflex thing. It's kind of like burping, except there's no gas coming up, and it may be related to when you're talking by yourself for too long, you're breathing a lot. I'm not sure what is causing it. So I try the cough drops help a little. But yeah, these state employees, even the good ones, like Lally is by all reputation a good state employee, a solid lawyer. He's an intelligent man, diligent, hardworking man. He's managing a lot of things by himself. He's extremely overworked. And that's how it is at a lot of these agencies. And in other agencies or in other parts of it, there are also people that don't carry their load. And because they work in a state job, they can't get fired. So it's left on enormous, and some of them are completely incompetent. And so it's that workload is left on someone like Lally to take on all of that by himself. He was handling other cases while doing this massive Karen Reed case by himself. Hank Brennan has had a huge advantage because he's building on the body of work that was put in place by the first trial. It's easier to build on something. Not that he's not a great lawyer and doing a perfect, a very good job anyways, but Maui says, I think there must be new data showing her coming in and out of the vehicle. And I think there must be new data showing her coming in and out of the vehicle. All right, Maui repeated that, not me. I think she's right. There must be. That's the only logical conclusion, right? We'll have to wait to see what that data is. But that seems completely logical. Christina made to make a sticker go red. Christina is red with anger. I'm kidding. Thank you, Christina. Who is left to testify for the state? Well, we know for sure the dog expert is that Crosby, I think, and I believe, 4 experts, most importantly, Dr. Welcher from Aperture. Now, those are going to be, this trial is going to take a lot longer because those expert cross examinations are going to be done by Bob Alessi. It, you guys know it. You don't want to admit it to yourself. You're like, no, I don't want it to be true, but it's true. So it's going to take a long time. Thank you, Frankie. And thank you, Andy Dufresne, as always. Um, don't look so good, but I look okay sitting here. I've lost over 20 pounds. So in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's amazing. And because of what's going on in my back, I won't be able to go to the gym and hopefully at some point again, but it'll be many months before that can happen. Yeah, Leslie's going to, so if Hank has a, if it's a, if Hank has someone on direct for a morning, Leslie's going to have him on for 2 days. And so all those witnesses are going to be like that. So I believe we have a lot of trial to get through. And what is it? I think Friday, there's no trial Friday and Thursday's a half day or something like that. So we're getting back on that Judge Cannoni system of I'm going to delay this trial no matter what. And I think the judge has done a good job, very good job, but she does sometimes seem determined to delay trials. I think Leslie's pretty damn. I guess everybody disagrees with me. I think he's actually pretty good at what he does, but he's yeah. He takes a lot more time than he should, and there are mistakes there. So, but overall, he does it, and he gets all excited when he gets a point across, and he gets and his voice gets all high pitched. Aha! See. So Alan Jackson seems to have been really has had his role reduced, right? Canoni Hillbilly says Canoni is the boss they always wanted to work for. Short breaks and moved. Short breaks, lots of breaks and short work days. Yep. Yep. She'd be a good boss to work for, no question. Very motherly. Did anything else emerge this week when I was in the hospital that I may have missed? Big things, new things that didn't come out in the first trial. Thank you, my cat. Good to be back. Hi, Deb. My old friend Deb. Oh yeah, the ring camera witness. We're not sure what's going to be said there. So you guys tell me. You, in some ways, you guys are more up to date than me now. Hank mentioned. All right, that's interesting. So no good deed says that Hank mentioned having the time of John's seatbelt release. See, this is that little information that we were talking about. So if they have that, don't they also have Karen's? So Mark's been watching apparently since 2023. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I heard about that. I did hear about this. the motion to have. Why do they want the Aruba sisters to testify? Why decide now? What has changed that they've decided during the trial to do a 180 on that one issue? I don't understand it. Um, he's a very intelligent, uh, clever, tactical lawyer, so I'm sure there's a reason. I just worry always that there's a temptation to use all your ammo when you don't need to. If you use all your ammo, let's say you're attacking a Civil War fort, and let's say you're attacking a medieval fort, and you're attacking the walls. You've been shelling it with catapults for days, and finally the wall collapses. Huzzah! And now your knights can charge the gap. But no, you've got some more boulders to throw, so why don't you throw those first? So you waste a day throwing boulders, widening the hole. That gives the defenders in the fort time to pack all their defense at the opening. When if you acted immediately, you hit the wall, the part of the wall collapsed, and your troops stormed in, you take the fort. So sometimes you have to resist the temptation to use all your ammo. Keep it simple here. The wider you make it, that's more opportunities to add confusion. And you're keeping the jury's eye off the ball. Keep their eye on the ball. Get the win here. We don't even really care about second degree. If it's in reach and there's some new piece of information, such as that Karen got out of the car, okay, go for the gold. But the most important thing is to get the win. Get a conviction on second degree. I'm sorry, on OUI manslaughter. That's a solid win. Make sure you don't do anything that jeopardizes that win. That's the most important thing. And if you overcomplicate things, the jury's going to lose the narrative. This jury, if they were honest, has not been following the trial before this case. So all the even when you're trying to absorb the details of a case, it takes years or months to absorb all the evidence in this case. And just even some of the simpler evidence, what day it happened, what time it happened, who was there, who was in the house. It takes a while to commit that to where it's comfortably in your memory. And the jury doesn't have the benefit of doing that. And they walk into that jury room overwhelmed with information. And it's all jumbled and flying around in their head. Don't give them any more than they need to. Just give them what they need to process the essential here, that the timeline does not allow for any planting of evidence, and that the vehicle data, the evidence that was there, indisputably is linked to Karen's car, both, most importantly, the taillight pieces, but also John's DNA, and the other physical evidence that's important, such as the microscopic pieces of taillight plastic found in John's clothing. Stick to that. That and the all important vehicle data and the correlation with John's phone data. Stick to that. Don't leave the reservation. Don't start building other things in there, because even though it may be important and maybe someone can put that in a book later, it's going to confuse the jury. Laura says, no way that Alan Jackson didn't say that without a reason. He's trying to get ahead of it. Those 30 seconds that fought for is going to put the nail in. And so I agree, Laura. That's very logical. As always, you're very on the ball. And I agree. Thank you for sending the clip too, but 100%. There must be a reason. I agree, Deb, that count 2 is in the bag, with the exception or the caveat that um, 1 or 2 jurors might be holdouts. Now, whether those are jurors that came in with their minds made up and are beyond reach, then they're beyond reach. But they also could be people that just are hard to reach. They're hard to convince. And so that's what you got to watch out for. But in general, I agree with you. This is a really interesting point that I find intriguing and I think inclined to agree with. And I think I've said this in the past. Z in the house says, I agree. That's why I'd use the dog DNA, but not use the dog expert. Save for the rebuttal. Listen, those are decisions that Hank is better equipped to make than us, obviously. But um, I like the reasoning behind it. You know, yeah, use it for rebuttal. I think it sounds like Hank will do. I think so. Yeah. So you asked me earlier who's going to still appear, and I mentioned Dr. Crosby, but I take that back. I believe you're right. I believe Dr. Crosby will be reserved for rebuttal. Well, Miranda says that that's what Hank already said, so that makes sense. That makes sense. And Heather agrees with that too. So yes, that makes total sense. We're all in agreement. So I am pleased to tell you guys that I felt good enough today to do some writing to get started on the second book. And I actually wrote about 1,200, 1,300 words a couple hours this morning. So that I felt good enough to do that work was good and encouraging. Hopefully, I'll continue to feel that way and I'll keep working on it. As most of you know, my partner on this book will be Kate Peter, and she's been working herself on her own chapters on it. So this was a book I wasn't really enthusiastic about doing because I have other projects that excite me more. But I am excited with a chance to work with Kate. So I'll get more and more excited about doing this book as we go. And the question is, we don't want to just rehash anything that was in the first book. We want to update people on new developments that emerged in the second trial, like some of the things that we're talking about here. But also, we want to find a way to make this interesting to the public, and that's a challenge once this has already been educated. It just feels like it's you know you don't want to make it feel like a just a supplement adding adding some information. Mark paid $10 to say I look like poop, but I appreciate your honesty. um but I know these treatments are kicking your arse, but you got this, bro. Be strong and keep up the faith. So thank you, Mark. um and then in addition to that, I began working on a screenplay that I had nothing to do with this case, that I had started a long time ago, that was half done, along with my partner Dina McKinnon. And it's got nothing to do with true crime. It's fiction, and I think it's going to be valuable. I think it's going to be interesting, and so I'm just happy to tell you that I'm feeling good enough to do this kind of work. And when I'm awake, I feel good enough to work. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And the um the current radiation is to the very tip of my spinal column, where it looks like frayed rope, I guess, and it's all little tumors at the end of the filaments. And there's something about that particular area that they wanted to radiate it right away, that it can lead to some very troubling side effects, which it has not yet. So I've been through 3 radiations, and hopefully I'll get through the whole set without triggering any of those side effects. If I do, my strength will continue to come back, and then so if my strength maintains at this level, I'll be able to help with the show. I'll be able to do some writing. I want to work. This is what I want to do. This is what makes me happy, is doing work. And so for those of you that are wishing me well, wish me the ability to do work. And there's some other interesting and important projects in the work, some of them that are related to true crime, and that you guys will be very interested in. I can't talk about them right now, but it's big, and it's something that you guys will be interested in. And some of you will be able to help us with. So about a week after the radiation ends, I will begin chemo, which I tolerated well before, and then go back on the targeted therapy that had apparently stopped working, but they still think it may work within the spinal column. So go on that, with it eventually trying a way to get me to go back to once again attempt that drug that my body was rejected, which is really what I need to get to because that's the one that gives me the most hope to get a longer survival time. Um, but so far my body's been rejecting it. But there's apparently internationally it's approved to deliver it in another way. So it's called subcutaneously, I think, which is into the muscle or underneath the muscle. Whereas now in the US it's only approved intravenously. Apparently when you deliver it subcutaneously, it doesn't produce that allergic reaction, but it still gets in your system and has the same effect. So some combination of those treatments, but I do want to get that in me as soon as possible. So under the skin. Oh, that's you're correct. Under the skin. Thank you, doc. Um, so that's where I want to get to. And oh, excuse me. I believe if I get there, the process, yeah, that could be it. Absorb slower to adapt. Yep. I believe if I get to that point, there's a good chance I've had good reactions to drugs in the past that I will have another good reaction and the cancer will again be stable. And I'll get to work on these projects with you guys or fun stuff like fiction that I like to do. So that's all I want for Christmas is to be able to work on the things that I like to work on. But I do stay. So back to the second book, me and Kate will discuss what we think is most important and compelling. And you that been watching this channel know my feelings on it. What I want, it's not what I want. It's what there are two things that I want. One is the thing that we talked about at the beginning of the show for a long time. I'm just flabbergasted that people cannot weigh evidence more logically. I'm not saying I'm the right person to teach them to, but I'm doing my part. I think me and Kate should do our part. I don't this trying to turn everything into reasonable doubt is an abuse of reasonable doubt logic. And I'm just one tiny voice in a big sea. But all you can control is your own voice. You can't control the size of the sea. And hopefully others will take it on. You never know when your voice resonates with someone else, someone who does have more reach. But this is crazy. This idea that every little thing is reasonable doubt is absurd. Some things add up to reasonable doubt. If something is essential to the state's theory, and you can create a level of reasonable doubt about that thing that is essential to the state's theory, then yes, that's reasonable doubt. So if there are alternative explanations to what Karen meant at the crime scene when she said, I hit him, if the state's theory depended on what those people heard, then yes, there would be reasonable doubt because we can't know for sure what Karen said, and we can't know for sure what she had in her head when she said it, how she said it, things like that. So if the state's theory, any part of it, in any way significantly depended on Karen's statements at the crime scene, then yeah, there'd be reasonable doubt. But they don't at all. You could remove those statements, and the evidence is really the same. So, I want people to start thinking like that. I know you guys do, but I want people like KC to start thinking like that. I want people like Vinny and Peter on the show to start thinking like that. Is that arrogant for me to say that? I don't really care anymore. I don't care. There are good people that are employing bad thinking, and the only cure to bad thinking is to point it out. And that's what I'm trying to do, and we're trying to do it in the book. The other thing for me, well, there's two other things actually that could come to mind. One is obviously this. I know Kate's going to want to. I assume Kate's going to want to focus on this. Is this mob mentality, this way we give in to cult leaders like Turtle Boy, the danger of all that? That has to be addressed. It can't be ignored. It's nothing personal between me and Turtle Boy. I could give a shit one way or the other about him. I don't care if he lives happily ever after in a golden palace or if he goes to prison. I don't care. He doesn't mean anything to me. He's not part of my life. He's not a friend. I don't care. But what does bother me is how many thousands of people listen to that nonsense and aren't bothered by it. Because that's what's dangerous. What's dangerous is the mob. It's not Turtle Boy, it's the mob that he inspires. And so it's important and it needs to continue to be exposed. And the final thing is the feds. I just, journalism is dead. Journalism is dead. Other than John DePietro, journalism is dead. Nobody cares. Does Sue O'Connell care that the federal government interfered with this investigation? Do they care? Do they care? Did it bother them when Dr. Wolf admitted that the U.S. Attorney's Office was violating sequestration order and giving them updates on the testimony of witnesses in the trial? Does anybody understand? Do you have to be even a lawyer? You don't have to be a lawyer to understand how illegal and unethical that is, how wrong it is. But they don't want to report it. They'd rather go hobnob with Turtle Boy, have drinks with him. Where's the decency? Where's the journalism? Where's the investigative journalism? Who is looking into that? Who is showing up to the U.S. Attorney's Office and asking questions, demanding answers? Who? Hopefully there's someone doing it, but I don't sense that there is. I have not seen an ounce of courage in any of these people. Any of them. You name one. Other than John. I haven't, and I don't think he has the resources to do that kind of investigative probing. You need to be attached to the Globe to do that. Or maybe Rolling Stone or something, but they're all exploiting this for their own benefit. They don't want to stir up the feds and get them angry at them. But isn't that a sign? If you're worried about doing this reporting because you don't want to get the U.S. Attorney's Office mad at you, are you worried that what? The FBI is going to knock at your door? Are you worried that the IRS is going to be auditing you? If you're worried about that, shouldn't you be investigating it? Shouldn't that tell you the level of abuse that's potentially going on here? What did you go into journalism for? Do you want to be the weather boy? Do you want to be the weather girl? Or do you want to be a journalist and dig for the truth? This is one of the big stories of our lives. The U.S. Attorney's Office was corrupt, probably still is corrupt. They haven't come clean on any of this. No, they have not. Yes, Leah Foley has reached out to the various law enforcement partners, as she says, to say that the investigation was completely over. Great. She hasn't revealed anything else. She didn't reveal whether there were improper communications, which we now know there were, and we've known kind of for a long time, but now we really know there were. And she hasn't looked into why was Josh Levy, as a U.S. attorney, interrogating these people in the grand jury themselves? Why was he using a blow-up version of TV Daily News? Why is Turtle Boy not talking? We're not bragging about this. There's a lot there that she has to be held accountable for. And you might think, oh, she's one of the good guys. She's done the right thing. She's helped us on Birchmore. No. Doing the right thing means willing to do something that risks something that's dear to you. In her case, she's a lifer at the U.S. Attorney's Office. If she is going to have integrity, she has to be willing to look hard and shine a spotlight and be open about the abuses of power that went on in an office involving people she knows, people she works with, people that still work there. If she's not doing that, she's part of the problem. She has no more integrity than anybody else involved in that office. Now, hopefully she's got some secret thing going on the side, but we see no evidence of it, nothing. Don't pretend that you're seeing it just because you want to see it. We don't see it yet. It could be going on, and my guess is it's not. My guess is what we're getting is swept under the rug, which is what we almost always get from the feds. Swept under the rug, the arrogance with which they operate. Uh, this is the big part of the story. Now, I don't know if we're going to expose as much of it as we can in the book, um, but I don't know what will we get anywhere else. I'm not Woodward and Bernstein. I don't have a Washington Post newspaper behind me where I can walk into those offices and say, I'm Kevin Lenahan with the Washington Post or the Boston Globe, and I want answers on this. What am I going to do? Walk in and say, I'm Kevin Lenahan of Yellow Cottage Tales. It doesn't work. Somebody with access to legitimate mainstream news has to do, like the Globe Spotlight team has to do that. But how closely connected is the Globe Spotlight team to the feds? How closely connected are they to the Uber Josh Levy, Uber liberal Josh Levy? It's dirty there. It's dirty at that level. There's this close nexus between the media and feds and the courts. It's dirty. So all we can try to do is hopefully do the best we can to shine the tiniest spotlight on it in the book, and that's something that I'm going to do. Integrity comes from a lot of different things. It's not just the way you were raised; it's who you were born, influenced by the way you were raised, and how you've lived your life. Um, so I haven't watched Frontline recently, Deb. But I can't make them pick it up. I don't know anybody there, and so you look at the Globe Spotlight team. They took on the priest scandal, and yeah, that was sacrosanct because of all the connections between the Catholic Church and Boston institutions, including the Globe. But it also came that's also an issue that's right up the Boston Globe's alley. Issues that involve abuse and homosexuality. Those are the kind of issues that the Boston Globe would and should like to champion. But do they want to take on the federal government? Because what else is there? What other corruption is there if you have this corruption? It's not alone. This kind of abuse by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI agents they were using doesn't begin and end in one place. It's like you investigate a mafia hit. That hit didn't just the people that engaged in that hit. That's not their beginning. There was more, and if they got away with it, there was more that came afterwards, as we saw with Whitey Bulger. So hopefully, actually, the right, a perfect person, although he's not in the media. Hopefully, Hank Brennan will stay on this, because that's something that was a big part of what he did in defending Whitey Bulger was go after the U.S. Attorney's Office and the federal government. He got so far, but he only could get so far. At the end of the day, the feds know how to protect themselves. But hopefully, he'll seize the tiger by the tail here and continue to work this. And Dreamboat, that's exactly right. What we need is a whistleblower to come out from the U.S. Attorney's Office. What does a whistleblower need? A whistleblower needs someone within the government, the administration, to champion them, and they need the press. If a whistleblower came forward, with the Boston and reached out to the Boston Globe, a whistleblower from the U.S. If a whistleblower who is from the U.S. Attorney's Office, maybe even assistant U.S. attorney, came forward, or an FBI agent, and reached out to the Boston Globe, would they be interested? I have no confidence they would be. I hope they would, but I have no confidence they would be. It feels lonely, to tell you the truth. There's that back to that lonely feeling that I've had with this case for 2 years, and it just kind of continues. And Wicket raises a really good point too, that now mainstream media does practically anything for views. The days of people being the days of the media covering something for the sake of the story, that's kind of over. They're barely surviving, and they depend on views. Okay, guys, so it's 10 o'clock, and thank you all for being here. I think my voice got a little stronger as the show went by, I hope. So, yeah, it's a full day tomorrow as far as I know. And I can't wait to hear the ARCA guys, but I'm presuming those people all go last. So that's the evidence that we're all really waiting for. So again, thank you very much for being here, guys. We'll be back tomorrow. Kate will be here running it. I will be in and out and trying to help what I can and carry the load. Kate's opening monologues have become brilliant, so I'll try to stand out of the way and listen to that, and then maybe jump on. Um, thank you, everybody. Good night, Deb. And I look better than last time. Oh, well, thank you. I didn't know that, Ola, but I had just got home from the hospital like a few hours earlier last time. So I'm slowly regaining strength. I mean, even the next day at the hospital, I had to go back the next day for more radiation appointments. Embarrassingly, I had to be wheeled around. So yeah, I was still pretty weak when I did the show last Thursday. And I'm still weak today, but we can have to sit here and talk to you guys. But over the weekend, even that took too much. So as always, thank you, Tom Fleming, and thank you, Joe, for the great job moderating. And we'll see everybody soon.